In this video we'll point out mistakes and factual inaccuracies in war films such as The Longest Day, Zulu, Fury, and a few other well-known movies. It's fair to say that most historical movies contain inaccuracies, though this doesn't mean they're bad films. Nevertheless, it's worth pointing out when movie makers get it wrong. Let's get started with our first film, The Longest Day. This Second World War epic from 1962 details the Normandy landings as seen by both sides. We'll take a look at two scenes. The first focuses on the famous parachute dummies shown in the film. These dummies really existed and were dropped by the Allies to confuse the Germans. British soldiers named them Ruperts, a slang name usually reserved for army officers. In the movie, the dummies appear hyper-realistic, with helmets, jumpsuits and webbing. In reality, the dummies dropped on D-Day look like this. A simple sack shaped into a crude human figure. So why does the movie get this so wrong? I came across a blog that explained how the confusion arose. The film's props department created hundreds of molded rubber dummies, which were to be dropped alongside real paratroopers during the shooting of the film's airborne drop scenes. For this reason, the dummies were made to look realistic. From a distance, the audience would be unable to distinguish between the real paratroopers and the dummies. Ironically, the Allies were hoping to achieve the same effect on D-Day. For an unknown reason, maybe cost or availability, the director used the hyper-realistic dummies to represent the real Ruperts on screen. Unfortunately, this is where the confusion sets in, and the historical accuracy goes out the window. Another small detail the film gets wrong is the cricket toy used by the American airborne units to communicate in the dark. In the movie, John Wayne is shown telling his men how to use the 5-cent toy. However, it's clearly shaped like a frog in the film. Yet the real cricket used on D-Day was a simple brass clicker manufactured by the English firm Acme. Ironically, the company did make toys before the war. The next movie on the list is the 1964 classic Zulu. The film stars a young Michael Caine and Stanley Baker as the British officers in charge of a remote outpost during the Anglo-Zulu War of 1879. The movie was ranked 8th in Empire magazine's The 100 Greatest War Films list. Overall, the film is fantastic, but it does contain some notable errors. Let's take a look at the significant inaccuracies. The 24th Regiment of Foot is described as a Welsh regiment in the film. Yet their official title at the time of the battle was a 24th, 2nd Warwickshire, Regiment of Foot. Of the soldiers present on the battlefield, 49 were English, 32 Welsh, 16 Irish and 22 other nationalities. So not really a Welsh regiment after all. Probably another example of Welsh propaganda. Just like their road signs, and pretending they invented cheese on toast. In the film's most iconic scene, soldiers respond to Zulu chants with a rousing chorus of Men of Harlech. At the time of the battle, the regimental song was in fact, the Warwickshire Lad, and more importantly, there was no battlefield singing contest between the British and the Zulus. Whilst I can overlook filmmakers taking license with small details, like singing contests, one misrepresentation that's harder to overlook concerns the depiction of Private Hook in the film. Hook is portrayed as a drunken curmudgeon who was faking illness when the attack begins. In reality, Hook was a model soldier. And regimental records even show he was awarded a good conduct bonus shortly before the battle. In addition, he was a teetotaler and Methodist preacher. On the day of the battle, Private Hook was assigned to guard the hospital building on the outer edge of the British position, and was not a patient in the hospital. The film did get the basics of Hook's heroic actions correct. showing how we rescued patients by digging a hole in the hospital's walls and dragging them to safety, while fighting off Zulu attackers at the same time. Henry Hook was awarded the Victoria Cross for his part in the defense of Rorke's Drift. His elderly daughters attended the film's premiere, but were so offended at how their father had been depicted, that they walked out of the screening. No movie generates more comments online than the war film Fury. And the central aspect of the film that gets slated is the tactics used by the German and American tank crews. Let's just say that both armies seem to have misplaced their field manuals in this movie. The most baffling scene is when a German Tiger tank attacks Brad Pitt's column as it moves down a narrow road. The Tiger hits the American tank at the rear of the column first. The exact opposite of the tactics used in real situations. The standard procedure was to knock out the lead tank, and then the rear tank, trapping the column in position before knocking out the remaining vehicles. Had this happened in the film, Pitt's tank would have been hit first. Although credit is due to the film, as Fury features the only drivable Tiger tank still in existence. In the movie's end scene, the last surviving crew member escapes via a small hatch in the hull of the Sherman. I doubted that any hatch like his existed in reality, but it turns out Sherman tanks do have an escape hatch in the exact position shown. Who knew? Well, not me obviously. It's another classic World War II film. I must admit feeling slightly awkward including this one, as the era is somewhat technical and pedantic, but let's do it anyway. The film details the struggle between the RAF and Luftwaffe over Britain during the summer of 1940. The filmmakers did an excellent job recreating the dogfights and bomber raids. However, they could not overcome one crucial problem. While many Spitfires and Hurricanes remained in service for filming purposes, no airworthy Messerschmitt Bf 109s could be found. To get around this problem, the filmmakers substituted the Spanish-made Buschen for the iconic German fighter. The two aircraft look similar, which is not surprising as the Buschen is a licensed version of the Messerschmitt. The main difference between the two planes is the Buschen uses a Merlin engine instead of the Daimler-Benz engine, which powered the German fighters. The Buschens used in the Battle of Britain movie had fake cannon barrels added to complete the transformation, and its rounded wingtips were removed. Here's a quick tip: you can tell a Buschen from a Messerschmitt as the engine exhaust is much higher on the Spanish-built variant. "1917" is the British war film directed and produced by Sam Mendes. The movie is acclaimed for its use of a continuous one-shot, although it wasn't actually filmed in one take. While this film does a great job of keeping errors to a minimum, one mistake is the waterfall scene. The main character escapes pursuing Germans by leaping into a fast-flowing river and being swept over rapids. The scene's problem is that Flanders is almost entirely flat and doesn't contain any rivers of this type. Oops! In the film Enemy at the Gates, a group of Junkers 88 bombers can be seen on a bombing run over Stalingrad. However, the planes are flying way too low. As a result, they are barely clearing the rooftops of the buildings they are bombing. At that height, they would be damaged by the explosions and debris from their own bombs. My final complaint is general in nature. Please can directors hire a military advisor to teach actors how to wear berets correctly? Let's look at some of the hilarious berets worn in movies and TV series. Here's a tip for actors: dunk the beret in a bowl of water and shape it around your head while it's still wet. This will avoid you looking like Benny Hill. Thanks for watching, and if you've spotted any mistakes in war movies you've seen, add them in the comments and make sure you're subscribed to the channel.